You know that scenario. You saw a cool map in Krunker and just want to make one yourself. You click on the editor, but once you load into the editor, you just see a void and hundreds of settings. Let me, yes, this is me, show you everything about the Krunker Editor. If you wanna skip, there's a timestamp for each chapter. Where do you even find the editor? In Client, you go to More Krunker and press on Editor, and then a new tab will open. I really recommend using the browser editor. This is firstly because it's more convenient, as you can just have it in your favorites, and playtesting is so much easier because it just opens a new tab that you can open and close. Remember, in browser you can always press F11 to full screen. You can use whatever browser you want, but for testing slide maps I recommend Brave with uncapped FPS. For example, here in this completely empty map, I would have 3500 FPS in the top left. So this is better than the 60 FPS in, for example, Firefox. To do anything, you need to know how to move around. Press WASD to go in a plane and press Q to go down and E to go up. To click objects, press left mouse button, and to move around with your cursor, hold down right click. You can also fly faster when you hold down shift. You can change your speed and help controls, and then here's your normal speed. Set that to 50 for example, or 300 for sprinting. You can do it whatever, it depends on your map size. To move an object, press 1. To rotate it, press 2. And to scale it, press 3. Duplicate an element with Shift R. Delete it with Delete. Change its collidability with Shift C and its visibility with Shift V. For something like a car, because those hitboxes are a little buggy, you can press Shift and F so you can create its real hitbox and make the normal one uncollidable. You can press C to create a cube, for example, and you can press F to flip its axis. With moving an object, you can move it with these arrows in both sides, but with scaling it, you could only do it like this. If you want to move it in one side, hold down Shift for this side or hold down Control for the other side. The last important one is pressing X. Here you can search for any things in the editor, for example, a light bar. For more controls, go to Help, Controls, and then look through them. Let us now go through the top panel up here. Under File, you can save your project. This is very important. Always save your project. It will save a .txt file to your downloads folder. Make sure to have a proper save structure. If you want to import a project, you can either press Import Project or you can just drag and drop it into here. At Edit, the most important thing is settings. I'm gonna show you the most important ones. First off, UI scale. For example, I have 1 here, you could use whatever you want. For the sake of this video, I'm putting it to 1.1. In render, you can put up the resolution. I really recommend this. It just makes the game look way cleaner, as you can see in the background while editing. There's no reason to set it below 1, and above 1, there is not much change. Show real hitbox is a very important one. If you turn this on, you will see the real hitbox of rotated objects. If you have an object and rotate it, the original hitbox will stay the same. If you would press play now, you would see that this is not the hitbox. The actual red one is the actual hitbox, as you can see right here. This is also apparent in this slightly rotated one, where here it looks like I'm a little bit in the ground and here it looks like I'm floating. If you go to the display tab, you can show FPS. It isn't really necessary. Dark mode, maybe the grid. In the objects tab, something really important is the snapping. Usually everything just goes by 1, like 1 degree or 1 unit in scale and translation. If you do very detailed things, I recommend setting this and this to 0.1. If you do general rotation things, like rotating it by 180 degrees, for example, I recommend setting it to 45 degrees, for example. You can create a sign, and with 45 degrees, you can really easily turn it 90 degrees here. Otherwise, this would be nearly impossible. Another really important thing in object is create near. You just saw me make that sign and it spawned at 0, 0. But when I have this on now and I make a sign, it spawns right in front of me, like if I would press C to create a cube, for example. And Quick GUI doesn't really have anything. If you middle click onto somewhere, you can duplicate or other things. Object has a lot of things. If you go into scene graph, you can see all the objects over here. If you press on focus, you will be teleported right next to them. This is only useful in specific cases. If you have 1,000 cubes here, you can't really use it that well. Then you have all your different objects. Through the course of the video, we will of course mention several of these, especially zones. You can find all of these by pressing X, but basic ones would be the cube, which is here very important, or spheres, for example. Ramps and cylinders are here. With cylinders, there are many cool things that you can do, especially that they can be open-ended. At the radius top, you can make them pointy, or you could make several shapes with them, for example, a triangle. You can make many things with cylinders. If you do things with ramps, do not rotate them. That won't work. Just change the direction up here. In models, you have all different kinds of things like crates, for example. In tools, you have many different important things. Camera position, for example, is where your camera would be when you load into a map. You know the thing when it goes in the circle? Yes, this is camera position. Also here, a trigger is very important. We're gonna go over that later on. Over here you can also find a sign, as we had earlier. Also a path node, which is also pretty useful for teleportation. Or you could also even add sprays, and there are all of the sprays. So you could just choose any of them and just have them around you in the map on a random wall, for example. For lights, it is very limited. You can, for example, use light cones, which are pretty neat. There you could, for example, change the color. Zones has many more things, many very important things. You have your spawn point, which you already have over there. You have your score zone, which you need for many things in any parkour map. If your death zone, if you go into this zone, you die. You have the checkpoint, which is also very important for parkour, and the teleporter, which is really useful for basically every map. At the teleporter, you set the channel. This is how you connect two teleporters together, and then you have one that is receiving and one that is sending, and then you can see the line between them. You can also use stop momentum and use active checkpoint. Use active checkpoint is really useful in parkour maps. Also, you can change the direction in case you have force direction on. The player will then look in this direction when he teleports. All the other zones are more pub map focused, for example, objective. Then you also have placeholders and groups. Both of those are very useful. You can also create a placeholder by pressing P. It will always spawn on you, not like, for example, a cube that spawns further away from you. What does a placeholder do? It does the same thing as group does. In case you have two different objects and you have a placeholder that touches both of those, and you press on create group, here, group, create, then you can move those two together, and you can also do some funky stuff with them as well. But not everything works. For example, scaling doesn't work, and also sometimes some rotations do not work. It's mainly used for moving things around. You can also stop this group or stop all groups that are somewhere. You can also create a group with Shift and G. In Object, you can also search for custom assets, like this green arrow here. Under Components, you have some really interesting things. Environment first. Environment can also be done with the environment zone down here. This is basically the same thing, just that the environment in components is for the whole map and the zone only applies when you're in it. The zone overrides the overall one, obviously, and in the editor you can't see any change in the zones. You have to be spawned in. So what does it do? Firstly, you can change the sky color to whatever you want. This right here, solid is one color. Gradient is 3 colors. You could have, for example, have the middle light and then the top and bottom dark. Cloud texture is this really ugly old cloud texture you have in Citadel. You can also make it rotate and move. Please don't do that. You don't really need ambient. This is mostly for the sound. You could also, for the ambient sound, you could also have a custom one. Light is pretty important. Let me show you. You see this thing on top here? Yes, this is the sun. If you now change the distance, for example, it would fly away. If you change the intensity, that's just down here, as you can see. It's just how intense the light is. Don't set it to 0.1, don't set it to 3. Keep it at about 1.2. If you're doing heaven levels, you can do 2. If you do very dark rooms, you can put it to like 0.4. And the angle is at which angle shadows are around the map. This is also very useful. Here we have shadows. You don't really need to change anything. Here, weather. This is important. Here you have the fog. You can change the fog distance to really close so you can't see anything, just like in Stalker game mode, or you can set it super high so you can see over the whole map. It just really depends on what you're doing. You can also change the fog color to whatever you want, and render does not really matter. Fog would, for example, be really useful in a map like this. Little spoiler for a map that's upcoming. Next we have terrain. Don't use this, please. You can make something like this. Don't use this. This is ugly and laggy, unless you're doing something ambiguous. Zone is basically for Battle Royale. You don't need this either unless you're doing Battle Royale. Ocean, don't use this either. It is really beautiful. I absolutely love this, but it is laggy. It halves your FPS depending on whatever you like, opacity and like the reflection resolution. Yeah, dude, put it to 2048 and no one's gonna play your map, dude. For the sake of the video, actually, I'm gonna keep it on because it kind of looks cool, I'm not gonna lie, but don't use it because it just absolutely shreds your FPS. I'm actually gonna show you one thing that's really useful that you can do instead. If you go to Object Basic and then Liquid, you can basically have the same thing. You have your liquid, you can make this as big as you want. You can select whatever texture you want. You can change it, change the emissive. And here you can, for example, change like the speed at which the waves go and the height. This is not in your map if players don't have map details on, so they would see right through. So what you could do, what I did in Slide Blah, you can just have a cube right here with the water texture. It is way more ugly, but you can have both. You can have this one above the other one, just make sure they don't collide, just make it like this, for example. And for the people that have map details on, they get to see the cool map, and for the other people, they just see a plane. Here we are in Slide Blah. As you can see here, we have the waving ocean, and also on the outside, I also made some extra things. I could have extended those a little bit because these are, I guess, less laggy than the wave thing. But here you can see you have the waves, and then right under it, here you have the cube, and up here you have the waves. So this is one way you could do the ocean. Let me show you how it looks. So with map details, this would just look like this. This is definitely sufficient for whatever you want to do. Next one would be scripting. This is Krunk script. I have never used this. I'm sure you can. The only thing you could, or I would use it, is adding the press M to die keybind. There are better people to explain this than me. For game, test game, and host game, you don't really need that. Optimization, optimize faces. This is doing render faces. We'll get to that soon enough. I've heard this is a little bit buggy. I'm gonna be honest, I've never used this ever. But I'm sure it's useful. For example, scale, you can scale stuff. I'm sure it's useful, bro. Publish game and asset, we will do that later, but there's also a little bit of a publishing guide right here. On account, you don't really need this either, but you can, for example, look at your games. You can also do this in the Krunker hub. Then over here, we've got the controls, really useful, and documentation. Okay, great, it just crashed my game. And this is why you always save, and well, it backed it up. So on the top here, you have the 1, 2, 3. World and local are about, for example, moving something. This is world, and this would be local. Then you have face selection. This is really useful for reducing lag. We'll get to that later on. Or or for some other funky things. You can do the same thing if you click on an object on the side here. You can remove all the render faces. Group selection is the thing that we had earlier. You select all the different things and then you press group selection off and then everything is in a group. Wireframe. One use case for wireframe would be seeing objects through walls, or in this case being able to see where all the things below this huge floor are. In case you have a skybox around something with wireframe, you can easily see through it. And snapping is really useful because here I'm moving things by 0.1 units, and here I'm moving it by 1 unit. Lastly, for the top section, here you can playtest, and here you can change your player position, for example 0, 0, 0, and then teleport there, which is really useful in big maps. The way these two playtests work, here in browser for example, if you press the left one, you host locally. Here you don't have to do any settings, you just load into the map. Host settings, server presets, like time, don't work here. Triggers don't really work here, so just use this to look around. If you want to really host a map and also invite other people into it, press the middle one. There it loads up like a normal map. You select server, private, start game. I'm not a robot if you're not logged in, like in my case. Also in browser F11 to full screen. Then you can play. You have the server preset. Triggers work and you can invite people. And now onto the left side right here, you have everything about the server. You can make this smaller or bigger or collapse it. I like to have it about where the default is, about here, because you don't really need to use that often. I sometimes just have it collapsed. You mostly need the right section over here for your object settings. Here you have the name. You have 16 characters available, otherwise it won't work. You can add a welcome message and also mod URL in case you have a fancy map. Death height is basically where you die in the world. For example, we're at height 0 here, and then if you would be about down here, which is about height 100, you would die. You can set this down to -1000 or to height 3000. Just keep it below somewhere your map. Game modes is pretty self-explanatory. Server preset for parkour, for example, you want to make your server size to 20 and your timer to 0. Just an example. I like to use parkour map examples here, but of course you can make whatever maps you want to make. You can make rotation maps as well. In that case, zones like the domination zone are also actually useful, not like in parkour, because you need to have all of these in your map. Also things like junk. The rest of this here is basically like you can host normally, change whatever you want. For example, time scale is pretty useful. Sometimes maybe while testing maps, I recommend testing your maps in real time. Parkour maps in that case. If you want to make a b-hop map, you can turn off sliding over here. Or really useful, stop head clipping. This is pretty useful when you have a map with head hits, for example, or when you just don't want people to head clip there. You can also turn off mini-maps, for example, or turn off spectating if you want to make a mystery map or a raid map. At weapon config, it's just the typical weapon config. How much damage does it do? How fast can you reload? How fast can you move with it in the hand? How far do you zoom? Maybe if you're making a map like Slight Daydream, you can make the revolver have a spread of 0. In classes, here you just enable what is able to be played. Always get away with survivor, get rid of survivor, and also this guy. Configuring classes. This is really similar to weapon config. Watch out that those two don't overlap too much. In class config, if you want to make your life easier and prevent like mistakes, in runner you can turn off wall jumping for runner for specific maps, then you don't have to do it on all the objects themselves over here. Effect configuration is mainly for raid maps, for example, or any minigame maps where you have those effects like dizzy. And in history you have, if something happened here, I duplicate the cube, it said added cube, updated cube, deleted cube or like removed cube, you can go back with Control Z and then it undoes that, for example. You basically need to do these things one time, then you're done. Up there you always add models and things, go into your settings. Now, this part, on the right side, you have so many different things. For every single object, it's different. So I'm gonna show you the most important things, most important objects, but I can't show you everything, okay? Let's just do the cube first. This is the most basic one. You already know it with the keybind. You can make it invisible or collidable. Complex collisions is the case for something like this here. I said earlier that you don't really want to use that. Let me show you. Of course, if you're making something fancy with an inclined wall, sure, do it. But it is, yeah, it is very buggy. So it doesn't always work. Use it with caution, I'd say. You can make some fun things with it. Then over here we have bullet collisions, which for shooting AI collisions is for entities like in Soul Sanctum, the ghosts. Penetrable is wall bang, and wall jumpable explains itself. Can grapple, can impulse. Impulse is like with shotgun. You can turn these off in parkour maps. It doesn't really matter because you only have runner, and if you've disabled wall jump on your runner class, it doesn't matter if this is on or off. I recommend turning it off for parkour maps. Always have it on for pop maps or something. Like when you're supposed to wall jump somewhere, always have it on. Then border. Border is very interesting. It is very useful. It is used a lot in public maps. And let me show you what it does. So you have a normal object, you have a bordered object. So for a normal object, you can just go on top of it. For a border, you cannot go on top of it. You can't pixel walk on it either. So this serves as a literal border. You cannot go above it. Let me show you some use cases. Here we have slide blah, for example. Every single of these cubes here is bordered, as you can see. This is to make sure that you cannot go above them and jump through the whole map. This is one use case, like you spawn in here and then you go around, and to make sure that you can't like step on here, for example, and then instantly go to the end. Everything here is bordered. Here we are in Race Beppo. Another way you can use this, for example, is have it down here. Here I have this object, which is a border, and this basically extends infinitely upwards here, and that makes it so you can't jump into the water over here and it looks clean. You can also make something like this invisible. Show on minimap is for this minimap feature and step sound. Please, please, please keep it at default. If you want to be really fancy, you can do the other things. People kind of hate it because mods have their own step sounds and volumes. Use this with caution. Don't really use this in parkour, just in fancy sections. Then we have transform. Position is just a position. The middle one is the height. Rotation, same thing. The numbers go in pi. So like over here you can see it's 3.14 and here it's 3.1 halved. That is why you use the 45-degree thing. If you have snapping off, of course, this would be even goofier. And then size rescaling. You know how this works. Here you can just type in your numbers. You want this to be 20 by 20, and then you have this really useful. You can also go here and, for example, drag this with your mouse button up and downwards. Going over to style. Over here, you have texture, you have offset, movement. Frame animation isn't really important. You have the color and shading and fog. Those are also pretty useful. Firstly, texture. You can select from here. You can select wood and then the variant, classic alt, for example. And you can also, this is not new. It's been there for a while. But you can select all the different things here. You can also select an asset from here, for example. What are these assets that have been recently uploaded, dude? Oh my god, it's my asset. No way. No way, it's the cat eating a burger. Oh my god. Over here, as I just did, you can scale it. Anything below 1 makes it huge. For example, like this, it's just a line, and everything between 1 and 10, makes it smaller. This is really, really useful when you want to make some fancy lines or something, or when you want this wood, for example, you want to make it like this, and you want one half this way and the other half this way, for example, or you want this really precise. Really useful. Rotation, also really useful. This is just how the texture is rotated. Yes, very useful, very useful. Offset. This is how the texture is offset. Let me remove the rotation so it's a little bit clearer. So this is just where the offset is. Also really useful when texturing movement. You don't need this often. One case that you, I guess, kind of could need it. You have a waterfall here, and then you have a little bit of a movement downwards. So this is one of the few cases you should use this. Don't use movement too often, because some players might get motion sickness or something. But in some cases it's fine. If you don't have your whole map moving, it's fine. Then over here you have the color, as you just saw. You can select anything here. You can select anything here. You can also select previous things that you've done. It is wonderful. If you've seen emissive, this here is default, this here is maximum. It basically makes it glow. It is more useful for something like this. You have a dark brick. You can't make this any lighter. You could just make it darker, except if you use emissive. It doesn't even look that bad in game. You have to play around with it. It can look very glowy, so you have to watch out a little bit with the emissive. And the opacity, as we saw earlier too, it goes from 0, which is invisible, to 1, which is visible. Shading and fog. So over here, our fog distance, let's put that to 300. And let's put this here, make this a little bit of a big object, and put fog off. So basically you can see this thing around the whole map. It is not affected by fog. And shading is sometimes useful when you have several objects stacked on top of each other. For example, right here you have, also this water, this is pretty cool. This one has shading on, this one has shading off, and this is useful in some cases. If you're wondering about things that I'm not showing, these are things that I have never used and don't know about. Please ask other people about those things if you need them. There are Discord servers with very helpful people. Or ask me about some things. Maybe I know things that I haven't said here. Usually when I'm skipping something, it's not really important if you just want to make a normal map. Technical and logic. This here is mostly if you want to do something with triggers. There you would have destructible for it being able to be destroyed. We will get to that in the later section. Also, you can make it respawn again, and also have health, so you can like knife it a bunch and then it's gone, and then later it respawns. And to connect it with a trigger, you do the ID. And then over here you have the render faces, which you can turn off and on. We've had that earlier. This is really useful. Now onto different object settings. For example, here on a light cone, you can transform it in the size and position and rotation, or you could change the color of it or the opacity, or make this into a full cone like that. It doesn't weirdly end on the top like this and then it goes totally to the bottom. You can also make it move. This is what the alien stuff is doing. Over here, on many things, you just have color and opacity. On signs, this is a little bit more that you have here. On your sign, by default, it says hello world. Then you can type in hello or something that's really small over there. You want it in the middle, you press center. You want to make the text bigger, you increase the size. You can also increase the billboard in general. If you press don't scale font, it doesn't change whenever you scale this thing, which is pretty useful. You can make humongous text with this. Color is the inside color, and the outline color is the outline color. You can't see anything really because the outline is basically non-existent here. For example, now you would be able to see it way better. Another way to see it better is change the background. And you can also just remove the background, which is really useful in many cases. Then, as I mentioned earlier, you have some cars. On a car, for example, you have all these visible, collidable. Here you can press Ctrl and F again to get a proper hitbox of it. And you can change the model scale. This doesn't really work that well when you do Ctrl F, so only do that when it's the original scale. Yeah, so you can basically make them this big. That's the maximum of you can make models, and you can basically make them really small. Step sound again, variant. So you can have different cars, for example. You have some difficulties recoloring this because it changes all the colors, and here you can have the destructible thing again. On cylinders, you have many cool things that you can change. You can change open-ended. You can change the radius on top. You can make a little cone. You can make a radius bottom smaller. You can change the sides, like it being ultra clean or like a triangle, dude. And you can rotate it a little bit without having to rotate it this way. And you can also change how long the sides are. As I showed earlier, you can do many cool things with that. For example, in this map right here, this right here are 2 cylinders. These are also 3 cylinders. Yes, these things are cylinders, and these are spheres and light cones. So that's basically all the objects here. The rest, everything else is a cube. Then you have more things. For some zones, you can only change the position. For objectives, you can change its number, which should be the first. For teleporters, we had those earlier. Here you can change if it's receiving or sending, the channel, and if it should stop momentum or use an active checkpoint. For checkpoints, it is just single used. And score zones, how much score it should give. How the triggers work, this is not a cube by the way, it just looks the same. You can do all the things that you can usually do with it, can even make it spin. The most important part right here is technical and logic, because here you don't only have the normal things, you have signal used, and those things you have events and actions. Oh my god, look at this. There is so much that you can do with them. Let me show you that stuff in a different map. This here is the Klexi event map. I turned off the ocean, maybe that gets rid of the lag a little bit. So, here in this map we have a lot of triggers, that's why I chose it. Firstly, the teleporter right here. Let me show you how this works. So, it is destructible, and then when you melee it, you get teleported to a path node. Isn't much anything else, no condition for example. This path node is over here, so you just knife this thing and then you get teleported over here. Same thing goes backwards. With this, always make sure to have the correct node ID. Then, for example here, to give yourself a sniper, for example, you could press change primary weapon to a sniper rifle. You can change your player's team, you can refill your knife, or over here, this is the destructible thing we had earlier. So technical and logic destructible, and then no respawn, and give it an ID. And then if you, for example, press open gate, you have destroy interface. And then here's the target free, because that's the ID free ID here. This one here sets your player team just if you're in the object. Then over here at this aiming section, we have further things that are really fancy. Let me show you. Here we have our destructible interface again. And over here, what is this one? This right here is if you go through it, because it is not player collidable and invisible, you get a semi-auto. Then you're in here, can do your things, and then when you go back, it clears your loadout and you only have your knife again and are here. Then if you shoot this, for example, you destroy this interface. What that does, it destroys this interface for 10 seconds because it has a respawn timer of 10 seconds, and then you can shoot whatever here is. These things have a health of 10, so you can kill them with semi-auto really easily. These are destructible, and These are triggers, in fact, this time. And they gave you a score of 1 on shoot. Over here, we have our teleporter again, and also here you can, if there was a problem, for example, you can set your player score on hold mouse. And then over here we have some teleporters again, or refilling the knife, because this here was the knife fight. If you're wondering, this zone here is a PvP zone. Even if you're in the same team, you can PvP in this zone. I'm not done. Let me show you more. Here we have the Great and Grand Slide Aimer. You might know of this, and I think this is a pretty good level to showcase everything, and this one down here. So what could you do here, for example? So firstly, if you shoot an object right here, which is not this uncollidable one, if you shoot this, okay, so on shoot, it destroys an interface and has a target ID, which is this one. This has the ID 40, and it respawns after 2 seconds. Here you can, and it's destructible. So you shoot this gets destroyed and respawns. And over here, this is on melee, for example, destroying the interface. You can also chain these, like this one here. You shoot this gets destroyed, and you can shoot this, and this gets destroyed, and then you can shoot this, and then this down here gets destroyed, and then you can move on. For things like that, what I did, I disabled player collidable, so you can go through this. This is right here is the trigger, and then if you shoot it, this one, because it is destructible, it gets destroyed. And then for these, if you hold your mouse, you get teleported to a path node. Also really important to mention is the height and width of the hitbox of a trigger. This is sometimes really useful when you want to reduce that. In this case, you do not want to reduce it. In this case, you might want to extend it, but in other cases, it's really useful to reduce the hitbox, so you have to be closer to the thing to activate it. With this changed hitbox, you couldn't knife right here, but in the middle. We can try the same one with this here, which is an interact trigger. You will see vast differences between these two. I didn't resize the hitbox by that much, but with this, you can already interact when you're kind of close, or like this, and for this one, you really have to be at the barrel. And here's one more thing about triggers that you can use them. This here slide blah blah, which is a more difficult version of slide blah. It is very difficult. Here you have the leaderboard. You enter the object. It saves your data of time and updates it if it's lower. And you have to have all the score, which is 22 points in this case, greater or equal. Doesn't matter, make equal if you don't have any extra points. I don't have any extra points either. You have an action where it says send message time logged, and here it also has the condition that you need the points. And if you don't have all the points, like less than 22, it says collect all points for time to log. Then over here we have this cylinder. Yes, we have this one that if you interact with it on interact key, ignore this. You can set this to whatever, require score, require kills. KR is just the default. It's cost 0. It doesn't matter. It teleports you back to spawn. Here you can have it say teleport to spawn irreversible on your custom message when you interact with something. This, for example, teleports you back to here. While we're at it, wait, I have to go to my favorite one. Where's my favorite one? This right here is my favorite one. The woke left without saying goodbye. So here on this one, on all of these, it says press F or whatever your key is to pet the cat. And whenever that happens on interact key, then it destroys an interface, and it also sends a pop-up meow. And the interface that's being destroyed, as you can see, all lines lead to this one, is this one. So there are, I think, 13 or so stacked on top of each other. And if you destroy all of them, you unlock the meme here. These are destructible and have the ID. Then furthermore, we have things like the burger here, which you can teleport yourself to a path node. Again, we've had that earlier. Then another thing you can do with something like the coconut here, you can have the coconut. I could have made the coconut into a trigger, but whatever. Then you have this here. It says press F to hit your head, and then if you hold your mouse, or like hold M1, it says hold M1 to hit your head, and then it kills the player, for example. Same thing goes for the rusty nail over here. You could also make a leaderboard with wins. Don't take me on that exactly, but you can have your key switched out with wins instead of time, then increase the value each time. For the leaderboard, you'd have the custom leader type wins and then descending. Leaderboards are probably similar to signs. You have your size, you have your font, your outline, you have how many results should be shown. For this win stuff, I believe you would need something to end the round with, so this mostly just works in run or raid maps. That's why I then just switched this out for a second leaderboard that has time descending and here ascending, and this button right here just teleports you up here and says GG now. Over here on slide 20, which is not yet finished by the way, I'm only a few levels in. Here you can read the letter and then it sends you a pop-up to explain how the level is done. One last example with triggers is here the donations in slide relaxing. Over here you can have it say donate 49 KR, for example, on interact key cost KR, and this time you don't set it to 0 and then sends a pop-up thank you, for example, or does whatever. I hope I've showed you enough with triggers. You can do many things with them and just search around. If you can't do something, you can probably. You can ask people how to do things. I just showed you a bunch of pretty cool examples. Let us now interactively look at some bugs and glitches in the Krunker Editor and the Krunker game. This one right here I've already showed you. This is the real hitbox, this is the object rotated, but the real hitbox is still the same. Then, over here, like a sore thumb, sea fighting. Everyone hates it. This is horrible. This happens when two objects overlap. This can happen in the floor, this can happen in walls. A way to fix this is, firstly, make sure they're aligned correctly, or that they overlap, or that there's something in between. In between could be used for these walls. Then once we go up here, oh no, I can't climb this ladder. Yes, because it's the wrong way. This ladder is the correct way. You have that in the object settings under direction. The same thing goes also for ramps. Once we go over here, you can see that up here all those things are also glitchy, and also that this ladder is not far enough upwards. One further thing that someone could do if you have not bordered your things is just that he jumps up. And over here is one way of making sure that people don't see the sea fighting on top. By just not having these render faces, people don't see this except for spectator mode. You might have been noticing these things are floating, so what you can just do in case of you have water, make sure it is not floating like right here. Here we have about the max player jump height. If I set my frames low, I can jump about this high, and with 10 FPS or cheats, you can even jump these 20.2 units high. This right here is 19 units high. For anything you want a player to jump on, make sure it's 18 units or less. Head glitching. Yes, you can go under an object by crouching and then stand up, and then you're inside the object and can go wherever. This right here is 18 units, and with high FPS I can still jump on this. Even sometimes when you can't crouch under something, you can still head glitch through it if you spam enough. But oh, what do we have here? We have a render face that has been forgotten to be done, because you can clearly see that there's a render face here. Make sure to do render faces, but make sure to make them correctly. And over here, what do we have here? Oh, ooh, an environment zone. An environment zone that is totally not fitting. You would never expect here to be at an environment zone. So if you have them, make its settings correctly. This one here is, for example, really ugly. Ramps, ramps, ramps. Everyone hates ramps. You might know the glitch. You can just go into this object right here. You cannot go into here. One way to fix this is by just making something on top like this. And also, please make sure there are no holes in your map. And for ramps that you have out about, make sure they are filled. And yeah, please avoid players being able to step on top of that, because ouch, it makes such a horrible sound. Then over at hitboxes here, this is the original 3 hitbox. This is the one when you do the fixed hitbox. For bounce pads, make sure they have the correct height. This one has 0.1, it boosts me barely anywhere. This one boosts me even downwards, which does not work at all. And this one boosts me really high. Oh no, there was an object above my head. Make sure there are no objects above your head. Over here we have pixel walks. If you place an object, duplicate it and have it on top, then you can pixel walk on it. And if you do the opposite, if you have an object here, duplicate it downward, then you cannot pixel walk on it. And let's go back. Here you go. Here we had a teleporter to teleport me back to the spawn. So you want to make a map and you decided to make a parkour map. How do you make a basic parkour map? For your information, there are many more things that you can do. The most popular ones are parkour, a little bit puzzle, rotation, racing, and raid. So what do you need? You need a starting platform, some area where your player spawns with your spawn point. That is necessary. Also, please don't use this stone texture. I'm just using it here for a quick showcase. Here you've got your first level. Depending on your map, of course, you have different difficulties. Like you start easy and then it gets more difficult. Some maps have all levels difficult, like Slide Hills, for example. You have a level selector, so you can go really creative. Before we continue, I really recommend you to not make a map that is just a tunnel with these square platforms that are evenly spaced. Please don't just make a tunnel. Similar with this one. Firstly, don't use KR skips, please, and don't just have the same platform copied one after another and just have it going straight in one line. Please don't do that. That's really not creative at all. So once you've decided on how you want to make your map, how you want to structure it, you of course need a teleporter. This teleporter right here makes sure that you always get teleported back to where you just were, because you don't just want to fall down and die, because that takes forever. You also want checkpoints, and to make it easier in the first level you can just have a teleporter with a channel to over here, or you could just make a little checkpoint in the way of this. This right here isn't that great because you go diagonally, but basically you use active checkpoint and you get teleported back to this one here. Move it a little bit further back so that people don't instantly spawn on the edge, so that they can take a little bit of a run up. And then of course you're gonna need a checkpoint at the next level when you don't want people to be jumping directly at the thing and getting the checkpoint. It is not always sufficient to just have it like this. If you want to really be safe, then go about 3 units inwards. So then you have your checkpoint, make sure to make it high enough, unless there's something above it, of course. You don't only want a checkpoint, you also want a score zone. The checkpoint is so that you can teleport back when you fall down, and the score zone is so that you can get the score and get on the leaderboard. Make sure that your score zone is the same size as your checkpoint. In verticality, it doesn't really matter. I just like to do this so I can select one of these. Then what people also really like to have is a death zone somewhere on the platform. You don't really do a death zone in most parkour. What you do is you add a trigger. What you can do with this trigger right here, trigger event, use either on hold mouse or on interact key. Interact key is here, hold mouse is here. I'm just gonna use hold mouse for now. You can have a custom message, so it would say press F2, hit your head against the wall here. Then trigger actions, go to action 0. You don't need a condition, but here you can set kill player. And boom, that's done. You have a kill trigger. Make sure to place it somewhere where there's a checkpoint and not just in the middle of a level without a checkpoint. Anytime you have a death zone like this, please add some kind of indication like a skeleton or something. And also sometimes recommended is having an indication of where the score zone is. You don't need this, but sometimes in some maps people really like to know where they have to go. So just making something like this, like a yellow thing on the floor or whatever you want to do. Just have it be visible where a checkpoint is. Similar goes for something like a teleporter or non-collidable objects. I see way too many maps with random teleporters anywhere. Like, you don't want the person to jump on this thing and then they just put a teleporter here, or they don't want the person to jump on this and then they just make it uncollidable. No, don't do this. Just don't have an object right here at all. Or if you don't want someone jumping somewhere, just make a wall. Please, please, please. Don't just make invisible borders, or like this, just don't make invisible borders in places where it looks like the player could be jumping to. Please, please, please. I absolutely hate it when I try to jump somewhere and then I can't. Make your path clear, please. Then you just continue with all your score zones and all of your checkpoints, and then you have a full map. I'm gonna take this map right here again because it's just so perfect for showing these things. So everywhere here you have your score zone and your checkpoint, and then you have this thing indicating where a score is, then you have the trigger here with something visible. Right here you have the touch rusty nail and hold mouse kills the player. What you could do in these cases, you could fiddle around a little bit with the hitbox of this thing, just so that it kind of matches where the nails and that players don't have it on their screen all the time. So when you jump, you have your secret somewhere. Look, here's Krunker. Say hi to Krunker. Hi, Krunker. When you introduce a game mechanic, you can have a sign. Here would be another case of having the death trigger right here, hit your head, or the classic. I like showcasing this one rather than slide relaxing, because slide relaxing has this linear thing that I said you shouldn't do. I did that because I just wanted to make a simple map. This one is a little bit more creative. You go along wherever you want to go, and then you get to the leaderboard. I've shown you this already. There is a preset. If you go to custom asset and then search and then leaderboard, then check this out. You can have this leaderboard. By the way, there's a limit of 2 leaderboard. Here the sign says what you should do. So you just turn off the visibility for this and it basically works. It has the save data stuff and it has the send message time logged, and then you have time ascending. Of course, you can modify this a little bit like I did right here. I showed this in the trigger section, but right here I have a condition that you need all the points, and in case you don't have the points, it sends you a message that you don't have the points. This is not necessary in every map. This is just necessary in ones where you have points that are away from the main path. And with this way, you make sure nothing gets skipped. That depends on the map. On some maps, it's cool if things can be skipped. On some maps, you don't want anyone to skip anything. On some maps, you can't even skip anything, so you don't need to do it at all. Let's spice it up a little and show you a few more things that I haven't released yet. This is Slide Iron Ascent. Here in the spawn, you have the death zone and some particles. You can see the death zone. You can die right here. And then once you go along, you have all of these checkpoints. Why are there no score zones? And why is this way? This is because this is a speedrun map that you can take whatever path on. All of these things right here are also wall jumpable. These checkpoints are just there for people who just want to take the normal path. Because there are no score zones, the only score zone is at the goal, and here's also the trigger to end the thing, so you can go whatever path you want and it will still log your time and it will still show your time. This right here is just another example of making a map not linear. Yeah, it looks kind of confusing as hell, like it's just random objects, but trust me, all of these paths are tested. This comes to the next part. Please, please, please test all your maps. Please test your maps. Make sure every jump is possible. If you're too bad at the game, then get a better player to test your levels. In general, you should be able to do all the things yourself, but sometimes, like the last levels, for example, are not possible. So please, 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 B-hop or slide or whatever, please just playtest, play them, and make sure it's possible. Make sure it's enjoyable. Not only possible, make sure it's enjoyable. That's more so the difficult part. I can make levels that are possible, but I can make levels that are enjoyable too, and that are actually going to be played. And are you seeing the path that I'm flying right here? Yes, this would be the normal path for this thing, and even though it looks this goofy, while we're switching through maps, let's go to a different one now, and I'm going to show you some things that you should or should not do. Firstly, an unclear path. Make sure that your path is clear. This map has the clearest path you could ever have because there's no decoration. If you have lots of decoration, then it is sometimes difficult to have your path be clearly visible. In this case right here, it's really easy to not miss the path. But those maps that are like quality 5, those are also the maps that you can't distinguish the things that are collidable and the things that are not collidable. That goes back to the point that I said earlier. Make things that look like you can jump on them, make sure you can jump on them. And anything that you should not be jumping on, make it look like you can't jump on it. Then obviously the unique structure. This right here doesn't have the most unique structure. It just has this goofy platform for each checkpoint. But oh well, this map was made in 2021, I think. Then all jumps being possible and enjoyable. And also something people sometimes really hate is the last jump being really far. This is right here not the case. In some other maps it is the case. You know it when the last jump is just so far away. Switching a lot between maps are away, so this is an example where I wanted to have the jump far away. You can sometimes do this. Don't do this randomly. Do it when you have, for example, here a triple slip. To ensure that you've done the slip correctly, make sure it's really far. Otherwise, they could just do it however and beat the level. So sometimes it is necessary to have the last platform be far away when you have a speed check with like head hits and slips. You want to make sure like, you know, you're going fast and you can make it far away, but not just in a random level far away. For example, here as well, you go against the balance pad, you go here and then you jump over and this is really far. There would not be any reason for this level, for this thing over here to be super far away, for example, because this is a really slow level, and then all of the sudden this being really far away would not make any sense. Then I also recommend doing either M to die or the death zones frequently around your map. Then also make sure you have your environment zone and skybox covered. Environment zone could be either the global environment zone or just a specific one. What do I mean with skybox? By the way, new map, lol. Here, this right here would be a skybox. This here is just a huge cage around you. By the way, can we appreciate this insanely cool and detailed map I made in, I think, 2023? I never finished it. But this is a really cool map, I think. Oh my god. I'm just gonna keep talking and walk you through it because holy. Yeah, I never continues this. This should be like a rotation map type thing. And it has some really neat little things. Yeah, this is one example of a skybox. It would just have a sphere around everything. And lastly, please make sure you don't have any required speed gain on your level. In cases of this map right here, it's fine. But in most maps, if you have to get 1 or 2 slide hops before you do your level, that's ultra annoying. Please don't do that. Just make sure like have 1 or 2 extra blocks in the beginning of the levels. Please don't have players like jump left and right. Make sure all the distances are correct. Now a fairly interesting topic, lag. Why are we on this map? This map is my first ever map, except for this part here. I added this later. This is really old, before even proper trade lobby servers existed. You know why I'm here? Well, because of this thing. This is fine in this map because it doesn't really have anything else, and without this decoration it would be incredibly empty. But oh, do you see this? What is this edge? Me as a little noob, I made this beautiful, you know, I looked at all the detail, I made sure everything's right, but what I did not think of was that I had way too many objects, and the objects in the wrong places. This thing is pretty neat, but it has way too many cubes. This, you do not want a rock like this anywhere else. Also, this floor, the edge is beautiful, the shape is really cool, but this entire thing is just flat. This entire floor is just flat. The edges are really cool. The whole thing is flat. This is wasted object space. Don't waste object count. Let me show you a different one. This one, it ain't that bad in this map, but it has some places where there could be a little less objects. Over here, look at this. I mean, it looks beautiful. You've got all these rocks and all of these things, but do you see how many objects are just in this small part here? Do you see how many objects there are? I mean, some objects obviously are necessary. Sometimes it is fine to have all the details everywhere. Sometimes it's fine, but sometimes it's also a little much and you should just find ways to tone it down. Especially in slide maps. In rotation maps, something like this, or a trade map, it does not really matter. But if you have tons and tons of objects randomly next to a level where you're just gonna jump past, hell no! This map does this pretty well. Do you see everything here is super detailed, but then on the outside you just have huge objects, very few objects. This is really well done. Generally, this is kind of what you want to do. You want to make sure that the parts that you're actually jumping on and where you're at is detailed. Like you see this floor right here is really detailed, and over there is not even any grass at all. I have a little list for you prepared. First one is render faces. Render faces, my beloved. Do you see this? Everything here looks normal. If you go behind, you can't see anything. That's because you don't need to see anything. Anything that you do with render faces, anything that you would not see, get rid of it! This map right here might be one of the worst examples, because there's just basically nothing you can do with render faces except for these big objects. But even here, this thing, the bottom one, does not have a render face, so if you look at it from the bottom, you don't render anything. If you do this with every object anywhere, this really helps. Any side that you would not see, either because you can't go there or because there's another object there, make its render face be gone. Next one, uncollidable what you won't touch. You're not touching these things. Just make them uncollidable. The way I suppose the game works is that if something's not collidable, it doesn't have to think about if you're gonna touch it. Same thing for the if you're gonna look at the side of an object. So that's why you just make these things uncollidable. You can, in fact, use map details like lights, particles, water, because people can turn them off in the settings. The people that want to actually have good looking maps while they play it, they turn it on. The people who play on potatoes, they turn it off. Next, don't use random custom assets that are way too detailed. They tank your FPS. Don't! You can do most things with just normal cubes and stuff. Don't use custom assets like this. Next one is not using huge objects. In this case, what even is this map? This is the most ugly map I've ever seen. Oh my god, maybe something's bugging. I couldn't really find a map for this, but one would be not using huge objects. Anything that's like over 5,000 size. Because maybe once you've seen it, they start to kind of glitch when you look around. Then the thing we had from earlier, fewer elements. Have your decoration be where the player is at. In your rotation map, you can have your details all around, just somewhere in the background. Don't have them. And if your map requires tons of detail to look like that, you can make an FPS version. This one right here has way less stuff than the original, because the original had way too many objects and some players lagged. Then we had it with this one. Don't use this ocean element. I know it looks awesome. It just tanks your FPS so hard. Granted, this map has so many objects, but try to use anything else, please. It is so laggy. Here we have an example of the terrain generation. This is my map Mountain, where I just generated a really weird terrain. You can use this, but you should not really use this here. Unless you have a specific idea that you're gonna do with it. And we're back on this map. Yes, the last point is when you have something that you want to use several times, like this flower, or the coconut, or the rusty nail, make sure it has as few objects as possible. In this case, this is perfect. These are just two objects, the trigger and the cylinder. Same thing goes for checkpoint platforms and those things. Just if you have something that you just copy paste, make sure it has as few things as possible. This map right here does not exactly follow that thing, but I copy pasted all of these things all the time, and also these checkpoints. I made sure to have as few objects as possible while also making sure that it looks good. So this might be a medium example, but I think you know what I mean. Scuff also said that you should have as few colors as possible. I didn't know if that was true or troll, but I mean, I guess if you just have a gray wall, and then if you have a real colorful wall, I suppose the gray wall gives you more FPS. You finished your map, and now you want to publish it. How do you do it? Pretty simple. You go to publish and game, and you can publish it. There's a little bit of a publishing guide. You set your thumbnail, PNG, less than 250 kilobytes, category, whatever category you have, parkour. This here is other. And then you can post it to your hub. For example, you can say if it's mobile friendly. Here you can have less than 16 normal characters as the title, and then you have some description, and then maybe some YouTube link, and then you publish. When you want to update a map, you go on your profile on the hub, you edit it, or you just import the file, and then you also go to game, and then it says publish version 1.2 or whatever. Pretty simple. If you go to asset, you can do the same thing. For model, I've only previously uploaded textures. You do the same thing. You select your thumbnail, and here you have more space for the texture. You have 10 megabytes, which is really good. And then you name it, and then you publish it, and then you just have your object right here. You go to the side, you go to style, texture, and then select custom, and then you can either search for it if it's not on your account, if you're logged out, or you can look at my textures, and then you can select it, and then you have it here, and then you can do the usual things. You can make the cat red, no, the cat's red, or you can make many cats, or you can make one huge cat. Make sure to always crop it properly. This is just how you use your assets that you've just uploaded. If you want to see where your games are, go over here to games, my games, and then you can see your maps. You can look at whatever thing there is. You can change the leaderboard. There isn't much to do here in the screen, to be fair. And then you can go onto games and press on my games, and then you can see all your maps, and then you can host and play them. So publishing, really easy stuff. Make sure you have the correct version of your map. Make sure that you have everything done properly, that it's play tested, that there are no glitches, all of those typical things. And then you publish, and then you invite some people, then you test if the map works properly, and then maybe you update a fixed version. And also make sure to announce it somewhere. Don't just ghost publish a map. Send it in a Discord. Don't annoy people with it, but just tell people about it. While you're making the map, tell people about it so they're hyped when it releases, and then they're telling other people, they're hosting the lobby, and then the map gets played. As the last section, just for fun, we're gonna look at some new maps and also some of my maps or some of my favorites and judge them. One would be for this one right here. The render faces are done everywhere, except maybe sometimes on the outside. That could have been done. That is pretty good. The render faces have been done. The trees, there are a little many assets being used. This one right here does not have a good thumbnail. And if you spawn in, you have level skips that are ultra cursed and don't properly work. You can gain infinite points basically if you just die. It does not contribute to your time logging in the end because it doesn't count as a new points zone, but you can just in the top right see that I'm continuously gaining points, but in the bottom right you can see that I'm still on the same checkpoint. Also a big mistake here. Generic as hell. It's just a tunnel. What is this? What is this design? Why is there water? What is this sky? This is generic as hell. Don't do something like this. Let's go to a map that is nearly perfect. This map is wonderful. The design, you can see all the levels everywhere. It's got a really unique design and it has a new mechanic that really wasn't anywhere else really, which is the shooting mechanic. It has an easy, simple, distinct design that does not use many objects for all the platforms, which also makes it easy to build. Let's look at a map from the same creator, Slide Moonlight. You might know it. The jumps on this map are really well spaced, but this map is ugly as hell. For all stages, it looks the exact same. And please don't get me started on these ramps. Look at the B-Hub reflection. Over here you have the reflection below the floor. You have a very ominous, distinct design. But look at Vivo, a pub map. I love this map. This is probably my favorite map. And also, do you see how many render faces this has done? The pub maps do this really well. Anything that you can't see, its render face is gone. This reduces lag. There are many objects. Also here in the back, you can see all of these things. There aren't many objects in the back, but on the floor, they're all over the place. Oh my god, what is this? Help! What I have encountered? Ooh, okay, so maybe use weird CSSs that you force onto the player, I guess, but as you saw, it's really a no-go sometimes. This map, really cool. I love this design, but one major issue. Look at this. Firstly, you go here, you get teleported back. Why am I being teleported back? You try to go, there's an invisible wall. You try to go here, you get damaged. You go here, you die. This is what I said earlier. This map is super confusing. You remember when I said the thing about random objects that are not collidable, things where you get teleported back, things where invisible walls where you die? This map does all of these things. And we've got a map that looks like this. Some of these what is going on? Some of these published maps are so weird, I swear. Where's my UI gone? Oh my god, we've got a map by Corpse here. He's also a slide dude. And oh my god, this map. So firstly, what does this have to do with Donut? Why is this blue? Why does he use the default texture? Why are these things down here and so weird spaced? Okay, then we have someone who has spammed the new list with maps that are bare bones. Why? Don't do this. Don't just spam maps. Let me check out one of those. Okay, so why exactly? Then here we've got a raid map. Oh yes, I wanted to show a map like this. I'm so glad I found it. Don't just randomly place assets. These are just the default game assets. And don't just recolor the stone texture out of nowhere, okay? Please. Okay, I see. Hey yo, this power tier is sick. Look at this. This part here is sick. Oh my god. This is the map by Decay. It looks way better now. This is just an old map. I helped to make this. Well, I was just in VC telling him stuff a little bit. Here you have your generic line, you have your big platform, and then you have the same things. One thing that wasn't done here were the render faces and the collidability of these things. That should cover everything. I might have missed things. 4 things that I've missed, just contact me on Discord or ask other people. I hope I could provide enough things, have it compact enough. I know this video is about an hour long or even more than that. There is just so much about the Krunker Editor that you can say. And it's divided into chapters, so it's fine. The last tip for your first map is just make it. Don't worry too much about the quality for your first map. Your second map, try to focus over quality over quantity there. And make some cool stuff. Innovate. You see something and then you make your own better version of it. I'm currently working on 2 maps. I believe I've shown you both of them in this video. I really hope this was helpful to you and you found what you sought. Leave a like and maybe a comment of what I have missed, so the other people that look in the comments can see. And I'm not perfect, so excuse me if I got something wrong in those 1 hour of runtime. Alright, goodbye.